All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Nutrition Part 3, Dietary Theories. It's just me tonight. Like I said before, Dr. B had to take care of our son. So I will try to do my best to make sure this is as fun and educational as possible. So many diets, so little time. Very true statement. And oftentimes people feel like this, right? Don't know where to start, don't know what's good for me, what's not good for me. And people tend to end up feeling like this. When did it get so complicated to just eat a regular diet or just eat healthily? With all the different fads out there, who knows what to try? So we're going to try tonight to kind of go through some of the more common diet theories out there, and as well as present some newer ones and ones you may not heard of, to see if it's something that you would want to try as you move forward through your lifestyle journeys. So we're going to begin with Atkins. Obviously, one of the more common ones people know about. I mean, there's books on it. It was developed by Dr. Atkins back in the 60s. And then he also wrote a book in 72 about the new diet revolution, which is his Atkins book. And it wasn't until a couple of decades after it became revolutionary, and primarily for weight loss. And it's based on the fact that your body will burn fat when you significantly reduce carbohydrate intake. Now, most of us do know and recognize that we do burn a lot more, or we do lose a lot more weight once we reduce carbohydrate intake. And it is true because we do eat a lot of carbs in this country. 4 phases to the Atkins diet, which we should all know of. 1 is the induction phase. 2 is the ongoing weight loss phase. And 3 is pre-maintenance. And at the end of it all, when you hit your goal, you reach lifetime maintenance. And as you can see from the slide, all the different food groups that are allowed through each phase. Core principles, once again with Atkins, is high protein, high fiber, very low sugar. Now, even on this diet, they do recommend a good amounts of vitamins and minerals. And of course, try your best to eliminate trans fats. Some of the pros of Atkins: quick weight loss. And that primarily comes from dropping the amount of carbohydrates, refined carbs especially, that people eat. Processed foods are heavily restricted. So it's kind of more of a whole food approach to eating, which is important. It encourages the awareness of hunger cues. So basically you eat when you're hungry, and focuses on long-term weight loss and maintenance. So that it's one of the few diets that gives you a proper plan on arc, where you start off and you hit your goal and then you want to maintain. So there are ways to follow through. Now, some of the cons though, it can be high in sat fats and cholesterol if you're not careful. And because of the nature of it having very low carbohydrates, it doesn't give you a fair or healthy balance of the macros. Now, your macros are protein, fat, and carbs. Those are the 3 main macros we talk about. And of course, the last line, it condemns carbohydrates, but we all know that your body does need some level of carbohydrates for optimal functioning. So it's a good diet for some, but once again, not for all. DASH diet. This is the one that we tend to recommend patients to try, those who have difficulty with blood pressure. So it does stand for the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So it is one of reduced salt intake, primarily sodium, bringing in other good micronutrients like potassium and calcium, magnesium, and also fiber into the diet. Eating more fruits, whole grains, lean protein, low-fat dairy, and avoidance of red meat, sugars, and saturated fats. Now, there is a subcategory of the DASH diet where it's called the DASH sodium. And that one actually recommends intake of the sodium to be kept under 2,300 milligrams. Now, that's not a lot of sodium. Now, I think the dietary recommendation for sodium is around about 2,000 milligrams. So under 2,300, usually we try to keep people around 1,500. Is not much. So when you do go out and buy food, you look on the label and you'll see that the sodium section, and then you can see how much sodium is in there. And it literally has to be anywhere from 2,300 and below in the amount of milligrams of sodium. And that does help to reduce if you have an issue with blood pressure, it does help to reduce blood pressure. Now, some of the pros: there's no restriction in food groups. As you saw earlier in Atkins, it's one that was high in protein, and fat, but very low carbohydrate. This one pretty much is pushing for more of a balanced approach to eating. It's more of a lifestyle than a diet per se. just based on how people go about eating in the DASH diet. Now, some of the cons, however, is it requires a certain number of daily servings of each food group. So in order to do it properly, you got to kind of follow what each food group is supposed to be. So you may end up with 4 to 5 servings of X and then 3 servings of Y. And in order to have it be efficient or effective for you, you have to really follow this diet to the T. It does not take into consideration vegans or vegetarians or anyone who's on a plant-based diet, because there is recommendation for meats, whether it be chicken, low-fat meats. So it is recommendation for that to be a part of it. There is some benefit of high-quality, full-fat dairy in the diet. Now, that's for those of us who are lactose intolerant, it's not going to work for us. So DASH diet, long and short of it, is good to help reduce blood pressure, and it is more of a lifestyle versus a diet plan. Same goes for the Mediterranean diet. Now, the Mediterranean diet is one that was developed after research and looking into the ancient customs of the people of this particular region of the world, the Mediterranean region. And what was found out is that they actually had a remarkable health based on how they ate. And they had much lower rates of cancer, diabetes, heart disease compared to us on the Western side of the world. So it is a really good diet, rich in omegas, especially omega-3s, because we know those are really, really good. Omega-3s are good for reduction in inflammation, also help in memory and mental function. Very, very good. And it's definitely a whole food type of diet, excluding processed as well as refined foods. So it's more of a clean way to eat, so to speak. Now, when we think of it, these are some of the things I'm sure many of you already know. Extra virgin olive oil, eating fruits that are in season, and vegetables as well. Now, the trick with eating seasonal is that it does really well for your gut microbiome. So not sticking to the same fruits and vegetables over and over again, it can help your gut be happier and healthier. For those of you who like fish, wild fish is highly encouraged. I know Dr. Backus and myself are from the Caribbean, so we love seafood, but it's not for everyone. Nuts are also included mainly as a snack, and you want to get those that are high satiating and they have a good bit of omega-3s. Some of the pros of the Mediterranean diet: no processed foods. As we said earlier in one of our earlier webinars, processed foods have all these additives in them that can actually prove to be detrimental to your health in the long run. It definitely considers more of a whole food approach. What that means is more vegetables, things grown, not things that are hyper processed, obviously. The one con that I found is that it does allow for wine and coffee. Now, wine in very small amounts is okay, but I mean, Dr. Backus and I do believe that it is definitely deleterious to your health if consumed in large quantities. So, but just so that we put it in there, it does allow for wine and coffee, but for some people, based on lifestyle or other health issues, that may not work for them. Paleo. So it's one of the newer ones on the horizon over the last couple of decades. Everyone's talking about going paleo or eating like a caveman. And it's exactly that, eating in a way that the cavemen ate. So we're looking at diet, which includes meat, fish, vegetables, wild fruits, eggs, nuts, it is a low carb diet. So that's the one good thing it has going for it. I went to a conference for obesity, and one of the speakers made a joke that if you really want to follow a Paleolithic diet plan or lifestyle, 20% of your nutrition should come from bugs. And it was funny, but technically it's true, because in the caveman days, they did eat a lot of things that we don't typically eat unless they're delicacies now. Some of the guidelines for the paleo diet: high amounts of healthy fats like coconut oil, avocados, which are awesome, and olives. The vegetables are raw or cooked, and primarily raw in this diet. And that's actually where paleo diet users get most of their carbohydrates from. Animal proteins are definitely needed in this particular diet, as the red meat, the poultry, the pork. Fruits are limited. And this is because what the theory is that basically the cavemen encountered these treats infrequently. So fruits were seen more as a delicacy back in those days. and it wasn't a regular thing to have apples and oranges all around. Vigorous exercise is definitely encouraged, preferably more in the CrossFit nature. Now, if you think paleo, you think caveman, you got to remember, they didn't have cars back then. So it was more of one, they had to literally hunt and gather. So they were a lot more physically active than we are today in being able to live and also find their food. So that's why the Paleolithic lifestyle, or the paleo lifestyle, is one that definitely calls for people to be more physically active. I recommend that participants only eat when they are truly, truly hungry. Once again, it goes back to the caveman days. I mean, cavemen didn't have the leisure of eating when they want, you know, it was more of they ate till they were filled. And then when they got hungry, they went out, hunted, and ate again. So if you really want to mirror this particular diet, you should definitely do some reading and see exactly how you can fit this in your current lifestyle. So some of the pros of paleo: whole food approach, obviously, basically no processed foods. Organic foods are best. Foods basically locally grown, locally sourced. You want low sodium and high potassium foods. That's the good stuff. Okay. High fiber, you know, and whether it comes from some of the grains that you eat. Healthy fats are optimal for brain function, and the healthy fats are found primarily in the omegas, the omega-3s. Those are the ones that are really good for brain function. And of course, a low glycemic load in the diet. So nothing really too sweet or even processed in this diet. Now, some of the cons: the high quality meats that you do need for this diet, meaning the organic, locally grown, they can be quite difficult to obtain and expensive in this day and age. So it's one that you have to really plan for if you want to do the paleo type of diet. And of course, carbs have to come from the vegetables. And being paleo means it's not ideal for those people who are plant-based in terms of their eating habits or their lifestyle. Now, let's talk plant-based. So a large part of the conversation tonight, we're going to focus a little bit more on the plant-based diet. And there's been a lot of research and data over the last couple of decades that has shown that eating more plant-based has proven to be much more beneficial for overall cause mortality. And I will share some of those studies with you as we move along. So plant-based means vegan or vegetarian. Now, of course, we all know what the differences are. So vegan is someone who is definitely no animal products whatsoever. And vegetarians tend to consume some dairy and maybe even some eggs. So, and those vegetarians who do consume those are called lacto-ovo, meaning lacto means milk and ovo means eggs. So that's one type of vegetarian. You can also be just an ovo vegetarian. You can just be a lacto vegetarian. So there's different ways you can actually enjoy the benefits of being a vegetarian. Now, with the plant-based diet, it's rich in vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes. Has been found to satisfy all nutritional needs. So it used to be thought that going vegetarian or going plant-based, so to speak, you would be missing out on a lot of the nutrients that you need to survive. So, and I will share with you some of the data in a little while on how that is not true based on all the different studies that are out there and the truth behind going plant-based. Okay, now, it boasts lots of fiber, and we all know fiber is good for the gut microbiome. It's also good to help in reducing cholesterol and also helping in reducing blood sugar. And you do get a lot of nutrients or antioxidants as part of being plant-based. Whether it's resveratrol or lycopene, those are two examples that I've placed there. You get lycopene from your red and orange vegetables, and you get the resveratrol from things like grapes, berries, and both of those are really potent antioxidants that help to fight off disease. It's naturally low in fat and cholesterol because, let's face it, I mean, the majority of the cholesterol that we get in our diets comes from animal sources. And that's what we have to be careful of. And decreasing cholesterol intake or fat intake does lead to decreased risk of heart disease, metabolic diseases like diabetes, and anything else that's obesity related. So let's talk some facts about nutrition. So when we think of plant-based diet, we think of most people, or at least I was of the misunderstanding or the misconception that a plant-based diet is not one that had enough protein. Not true. When you think of protein, all protein does come from plants. When you look at the life cycle of a plant, okay, the plant is grown and it's eaten by your cow or your goat or whatever animal you have, and then we eat the animals. So now, in order for the animal to have the protein that we use, it has to eat the actual plant, because by and large, the plant is the only organism on Earth that can take nitrogen from the air to create the amino acids, which are then turned into proteins. So plants themselves, they do have a lot of natural proteins, but you just have to look for it, and you have to know how to the foods to eat to be able to get it. Lots of essential amino acids are found in many plant-based foods. Quinoa, for example, which is a really good grain. It's also considered to be a superfood by some. So when you think of protein, rethink what you think about plant-based diets, because you can get a lot of good protein from the actual plant-based diet. Iron. So now in plants, it is a lot lower than you would find in meat, because let's face it, iron that we get comes in the form of heme. Heme iron is found in, obviously, blood. So that's in animals. Now, there is some iron in foods. Now, in the plant foods, in order to get those, we have to obviously marry it with some level of acidity in our diet. For example, orange juice. So that's one way you can do that. And some plants that are actually rich in iron are kidney beans, black beans, even soybeans. Spinach has a good amount of iron, oatmeal, cabbage. So, I mean, there are ways to get it. You just want to make sure that you do the right adjustments in terms of the other foods you have to help improve the absorption of a lot of these nutrients, especially iron. So B12, it's needed for blood formation, for cell division. Okay, it's actually made by bacteria, not by any animal or plant source. So individuals who follow a plant-based diet that has no animals should also be watch out for B12 deficiency. So it's something that I would definitely recommend doing, at least a multivitamin, or if not, making sure that whatever foods you get, you research and see how much B12 there is in there, and just kind of supplement your diet if necessary. Calcium and vitamin D. So you can find this in plants. Tofu is a good example. Mustard and turnip greens, bok choy, and everyone's favorite, kale. So calcium intake can be adequate in a well-balanced, plant-based diet. Now, there is some issues with some of the plants, like spinach. Although you have the calcium in there, it's usually bound to oxalate, and that reduces the absorption in the body. Okay. D deficiency actually is common in the general population. So it's not only people who are on plant-based diets. I mean, the majority of those of us who are not can suffer from vitamin D deficiency. And if you think about it, that's primarily because we don't go out in the sun as much, because we're trying to avoid, overexposure and UV rays. So, and remember, if you go back to your high school biology, for those of you who did that, you'll know that D2 is in the skin. And it takes UV light to convert D2 to D3 peripherally so you can use it. So if you use sunscreen, you're blocking the UV. So you're not going to get as much conversion as you need. So even for vitamin D, that's also one that Dr. Backus and I highly recommend people supplement in their diet, even if it's buying it in the fortified milks, or even just taking it as a supplement. It's a really good vitamin to have as part of your supplements. Also great for bone density. So let's talk some of the science behind going plant-based, or behind eating more plants. Put it that way, eating more plants or adding more plants to your diet. So when we think of obesity, now what we have on the slide here is I took some excerpts of some recent and previous studies that looked at these different metabolic issues and how it related to people who are on plant-based diets. And I just took excerpts so you could see exactly where they're from, and you can do your own research and look it up yourself so you can kind of get an idea. And as part of this webinar today, we are going to email you a document that we actually have that I use to help kind of build some of what you see here, to give you an idea as to what the benefits are, the positive side of the positive effects of eating more plants or having more vegetables as part of your diet. All righty. Then let's talk about fatty acids. So nutrition facts of fatty acids. So the essential fatty acids are the ones that we need. Now you must actually ingest these. Your body doesn't make these. And they're either omega-6 or omega-3. Alrighty. Now, there's three others that we should look into. Palmitoic acid, which is a monounsaturated fatty acid. That one's actually found, if I'm not mistaken, in macadamias. And that's a good one. And there are a couple others away on the slide. Deficiency in essential fatty acids can make your skin feel less sallow, less smooth. Your hair gets brittle, your nails become thickened. So there are some manifestations of fatty acid deficiencies that you can see. Now, some good sources, obviously plant-based, ground flaxseed or flaxseed oil, or even walnuts are good sources of omega-3 fatty acids. Going back to the science. So when you think of diabetes, this one study, which actually impressed me, non-vegetarians were 74% more likely to develop diabetes over a 17-year period than vegetarians. And this actually was a really cool cohort study they did, and they looked at, metrics and labs of a host of people over that 17-year period, and that's what they were able to find. So, and the other part of that study, another study, was that people on the low-fat vegan diet reduced their HbA1c. Now, those of you who have diabetes or know someone who has diabetes, the HbA1c is that measure we do every 3 months to see how well your blood sugar has been doing. So we're trying to definitely keep that down, because we all know the higher that is, the worse off your diabetes is, and the more likely you to have negative effects of having the disease of diabetes. Hypertension, also studied. The vegetarian diets were associated with lower systolic blood pressures and lower diastolic blood pressures. And that's primarily because when you eat, when you consume other foods or even of animal sources, there tends to be a lot more added stuff in them, whether it be sodium or saturated fats. So all those that will impact your overall blood pressure. And that also relates to heart disease. So it's obvious if you look here, and like I said, I would encourage everyone, once you get a hold of this particular presentation, look up these studies, do your own little research, trying to figure out what works best for you, and educate yourself, because it's definitely something that Dr. Backus and I take to heart, and we ourselves are trying to definitely add in and eat more of a plant-based, healthier diet. All-cause mortality. That's pretty much that's the end of it all. That tells you. So there are studies that showed that the benefits of a plant-based diet on mortality may be primarily caused by the decrease in consumption of red meat. Now, as we said in the earlier webinars, red meat is the one that tends to have more sat fats and sodium and all these other things. So it's more of the same I'm talking about, but the idea is to hammer the point home that I want everyone to be able to understand that there is more out there that they should be looking into in terms of diets and ways of eating in order to achieve a healthier well-being. So these are a couple of the diets that I picked out just to kind of share with you guys. Now they're diets / lifestyles, and we'll go through each one. So the elimination diet. So what the elimination diet is, it's basically a diet that you start if you are having certain allergic conditions that may be related to foods you're eating. So typically what most people do is they take themselves off of certain food groups for anywhere from a couple weeks to a couple months to see if the conditions that they're having are improving. Now, some conditions are manifest in the way of skin rashes, GI disturbance, mental fog. So, and you can see that. And just getting off of certain foods or food groups, you can do your own little, think of it, your own little research study on yourself to see how you respond. And then what happens is, after getting yourself off of that particular food group or food, you reintroduce it at a later date to see exactly how your body responds. Another one is calorie restriction. So now that is in the way of basically keeping the nutrient or the quality of foods good without but with reducing the amount you're taking in. So typically with calorie restriction, you go from anywhere from 20 to 40% less of the calories you do on a daily basis. Now, this particular diet still emphasizes a macronutrient distribution of 30% protein, 30% fat, and 40% carbohydrates. So it's something to look into. It's basically portion control. So a couple examples of this would be intermittent fasting, which is also a hot ticket one now. And we do know that intermittent fasting has a lot of positive benefits in helping reducing cholesterol, reducing blood sugar, increasing cell autophagy. What that means is allowing your body to clean up all those bad cells when you put yourself on that intermittent fasting diet. So calorie restriction is a good way to start. It allows the body to kind of rest and repair. Gluten-free, big one. This is one that is actually personal to us because Dr. Bacchus has been gluten-free for about 6 to 7 years now. And it has done wonders for her. And we also in the family are in that same spectrum as well, because we also do it with her. So gluten-free diets came about to help those primarily dealing with celiac disease. So what gluten is, it's a protein found in wheat products / foods. So whether it be barley or whole grain wheat, that protein is pro-inflammatory to people who have a predisposition to having inflammation caused by gluten. And people who have that can range from anywhere from a mild sensitivity, where it'd be some GI upset, or maybe like a loose bowel, or even some nausea, to full-on anaphylaxis. So those patients who have celiac disease, they know what it's like, and being gluten-free will help. Now, there are some, you have to be careful with gluten-free. So it's been exploding all over the market, and you can get gluten-free products everywhere. Be very careful, because some of the gluten-free products can be hyper-processed and can also have a higher glycemic load, a higher sugar load than the regular foods. So it's something you should definitely be careful of and be mindful of what type of gluten-free products you use if you are in that boat or think you may benefit from being on a gluten-free diet. Important. It's a good one to definitely reduce inflammation, but just watch out for the added foods in it. Now, the last two are pretty cool. So the blood type diet was created by Dr. D'Adamo. He's actually a naturopath. And now his son, who is also Dr. D'Adamo, has championed that cause and actually has continued it. And the diet is basically based on eating foods that is specific to your particular blood type. Now, with the blood type diet, obviously, they have broken everyone down into the 4 major blood types, right? A, B, AB, and O. Now, with this particular diet, people who are of the A persuasion, blood type A, they tend to have very sensitive immune systems. And the foods that are recommended are those that kind of help reduce inflammation in that particular population. Now, the foods that they want them to avoid as much as possible is foods like meat, processed meats, dairy, and excess gluten, all 3 of which can be quite inflammatory. Now, blood type B, now those are people who tend to thrive on more of a seafood type diet. They do some dairy as well. And they're actually advised to avoid cured meats and also things like smoked fish and blue cheese as part of the diet. Now, if you're AB blood type, those tend to do well on oily fish, goat cheese and goat dairy, cow dairy, peanuts, turkey, lamb. Now the trick with that one is they do recommend the people who are AB to definitely avoid things like alcohol and caffeine, because they tend to have a lower stomach acid threshold. So it is important. And those of you who are O, those guys thrive on high protein diets, which are light on dairy and also wheat products. That's pretty much it for that particular blood type. So it's a pretty cool one to look into. And I would definitely recommend checking out their website just to kind of educate yourself even more. Now, glycemic index. So now what the glycemic index is, it's a degree or a rating of how quickly a food can raise your blood sugar. That's the layman's way of thinking about it. So in the glycemic index, when you think of it, there's 3 different sections. There's a low glycemic food, medium or moderate, and then there's high glycemic. So the rating for low glycemic foods is anywhere from 0 to 55. The rating for moderate or medium glycemic foods is anywhere from 56 to 69. And obviously 70 and above is going to be your high glycemic foods. So when you think of a high glycemic food, an example would be like a donut. When you think of a low glycemic food, it would be like quinoa or, very, very whole grain oats. So, and the idea of this diet is to basically eat to help keep your blood sugar low, because a low glycemic meal or low glycemic foods tend to take a little bit longer to be processed by the gut, help to improve or prolong satiety, which is obviously feeling fuller longer. And the high glycemic foods are quick in, quick out. So they spike the blood sugar and then you crash. So it's a good one to look into if you're someone who's dealing with blood sugar issues, whether it be metabolic syndrome or even diabetes. So definitely look into that and look up the glycemic index. Tons of resources out there. So these are just a few of the diets that that we know of, and there are many, many, many more. But I want to present a couple so you guys can know what else is out there. So what are your next steps? So keep calm and do your research. What that means is basically always be looking, look for what's new, ask questions, definitely bring them to myself and Dr. Backus if you have questions about certain diets, because without research, there's no growth. I would definitely recommend getting some books, listening to podcasts, even watching documentaries, because a lot of good information out there. And of course, you want to be careful. So I would definitely bring it to your healthcare provider or your doctor, which is one of us, to kind of sit down and say, okay, this may not be right for you because of A, B, C, or this is a great option. Let's give it a try. Know your health conditions. Very, very important. Not everyone is best suited to try everything. For example, people who have a history of very bad heart disease or stroke, we would definitely recommend avoiding more of the paleo diet, where you run the risk of having a very high saturated fat load in your diet if not done properly. Or even those who do, the Atkins. You got to be really, really careful, just so that we want to make sure that everyone has a full understanding of what they're dealing with health-wise and what would best fit their chronic conditions. And it's not a one size fits all, because one size does not fit all. So I like this graphic because, this guy's expecting everyone to climb the tree. Not everyone can. So don't be disheartened if, a friend of yours is doing paleo and they're down 25 pounds, look great, and you try it and nothing happens. It's not one size fits all. So you just got to keep looking and keep figuring out, keep asking the questions, what works best for my body type and my health conditions. And of course, explore new diets. Now, for some people, that may not be a good option. For example, if you are gluten sensitive, if you have celiac disease, or even like a mild gluten sensitivity or enteropathy, you don't want to one day decide, I'm going to go on a bread diet and eat regular bread. That's not going to go well for you. But for those of us who can switch between diets or switch between lifestyle plans, sorry, I prefer that term, it is good, because making that switch does help with your gut microbiome. And we don't want to give too much of a good thing, because we all know too much of a good thing is also not good. So keeping the microbiome healthy and happy by making even small changes within your current lifestyle diet plan is going to help improve gut health and longevity as you progress in life. So I want to thank you guys for your time tonight. This was Nutrition Part 3. And I'll be honest, there is still a ton of information that we have at our disposal actually, and it would have taken much longer to go through, but I want to present just some of the core main ones and also a couple of new ones you may not know. And that way you can actually benefit and do some more digging, and hopefully it piqued your interest to asking the question, is this right for me? Should I try this, doc? And we're here to help. Thanks.